phantasm, the answer changes as the process of magic continues. I very much think that there is a link between mind and body and mind and the physical world, and you can utilize that inherent connections to cause patterns to manifest. So I think that the modern scientific paradigm of magic is much more compelling than the ancient religion-based paradigm. I think that there is science to really enforce and prove that it is possible for a human being to extend their powers, to extend the powers of their mind beyond simply personal content and interact with the physical world in a more intimate way. So this is what I have wanted to do with my magic. I think it's fully in line with what Crowley was doing, and so that's why I rejected that whole religious paradigm to begin with.
But are you so sure that that's Crowley's position, that they don't exist?
Well, it's not that they don't exist, it's that they exist in the collective unconscious. See, Crowley addressed this question many times in his writing. I think his clearest exposition can be found in his essay on the astral plane. This is Appendix 3 of Magic in Theory and Practice, which many Crowley enthusiasts have read. And Crowley says that there are two main paradigms of dealing with these magical spirits. There's the religious paradigm that views that these things are literally real, existing on their own plane of existence, and can be drawn to you through your magic. And the other paradigm is the psychological paradigm, which I've been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Which I've been describing. Now, what Crowley says in this essay is that it doesn't really matter what you believe. Believe one way or another, it's up to you. Just do the magic, get the results, write them down, and that's what you need to deal with. Now, something else that Crowley wrote in his translation of the Goetia, he said outright, the goetic demons are parts of the human brain. Mm-hmm. That's straight out of Crowley's recension of the Goetia. Mm-hmm. Certainly in other of Crowley's writings, he asserts that the spirits are real. His holy guardian angel, which he called Iwas, he referred to it as a praeter-human existence.
Right.
That Iwas was real in an overt way, like you and I are real.
Right. Let me read you a paragraph
here. Crowley was kind of ambiguous.
Well, tell me if this is ambiguous. It seems to me much simpler to say that these angels are real individuals, although living in a world whose laws we have no conception, and that in order to communicate with us, they make use of the symbolic forms appropriate, employ, in short, a language of the astral plane. That's out of Magic Without Tears.
Right. Again, Crowley wrote different things for different people, and he ultimately in different places, Crowley espoused both views, the psychological view and the literal view. And so you can point and choose whatever, you'd like to follow. It seems to me that the literal paradigm doesn't make sense. I don't see why a certain symbol, a certain design on a piece of paper should have such virtue as to reach into the astral plane and attract the attention of beings who obviously have a life of their own and are concerned with their own affairs. Why they should be interested in human affairs to start with really escapes me. I don't believe in the literal view at all. Mm-hmm. I don't think that it's true. I don't believe in religion. I don't believe in the literal existence of God. There's never been any kind of physical proof. I think that the power is the human power. And in the new eon, it's always been my understanding that so much of the unusual phenomena that people have reported are more easily understood as tricks of the mind, but also an uncontrolled mind working to actually influence material events. That, to me, is a more realistic viewpoint. Now, there are other Thelemic writers that also espouse this psychological viewpoint. In particular, Lon Milo Duquette espouses this. I'm reading his recension of the Goetia, which he calls the Illustrated Goetia. And he also views the demons as parts of our own mind, which we can then make real to do things for us. And in that process, we undergo a psychological healing, and that healing process then influences material events and makes a person ready to receive whatever it is thereafter. I think this is a much more realistic and probable way of viewing things. Well, I just don't see how these markings on paper could reach to a whole other plane of existence. I don't believe that there are entities who obviously have their own life and concerns who would be constantly listening for them to be called. That to me reinforces the whole religious paradigm that humanity is the center of existence and everything else is geared toward benefiting humanity.
Okay, well, let's move on to some of the technical aspects. And you said that the first part of your book is your journal,
right,
and then the second part, the appendices, that have all of the technical details of how you went about your rituals. It has copies of the tables, the pronunciation, and you do mention that there's the two different types of pronunciation. You're doing the more kind of direct pronunciation, and then you also mentioned kind of the Golden Dawn pronunciation, which Crowley used and is in that he published in Gems. What is it, Liber Chanach? He's got all the Hebrew kind of vowels that have been added to the consonants. Now, an example of you've got the suggested phonetics listed here. You also have the Enochian. One thing that I did notice, though, is the tables that you use have the Enochian letters on them versus the English letters. Is there a particular reason? Did you find the Enochian letters were more effective, or was that what you had available to you?
Well, what I wanted to do was to cut across the Golden Dawn complexity and approach John Dee's magic more in the way that John Dee did it. Now, John Dee didn't have the pyramid system like the Golden Dawn had, and from what I've learned from various teachers that I have gone to is that John Dee pronounced the Enochian words as if they were English words.
Okay.
And so you can add vowels as if they were English words to make them pronounceable. Now, what the Golden Dawn did was make every single letter its own syllable.
Right.
Now, it makes sense to do that with Hebrew when most words are 3, 4, or 5 letters long. But when you're dealing with Enochian words, they can have many more letters. And so it really lengthens the time it takes to utter an Enochian call when you do that. It seemed to me as too concocted to do it that way. I wanted to approach the magic in a simpler way, and so, like John Dee, I just pronounced the Enochian words as if they were English words, and it makes it, I'm able to put more emphasis on words, and I have a recording of Aleister Crowley doing the Enochian, first Enochian call.
Yeah, the recordings have him doing the first and second key.
Right, right. Yeah, there are 48 calls, which is yet another system of Enochian magic that Dee and Kelly developed. There's quite a few of them. Dee and Kelly did a great deal of work in their time, and they've left us quite a rich tradition. But in focusing more on the usage of the Enochian language, I wanted something that I could really put a lot of power into. Crowley's pronunciation of the first and second calls, sometimes they're called keys. It's a very long, sonorous kind of sound. I wanted something that I could really project my voice into and really try and make the space around me shake, or to give me that sensation. And so I wanted to be able to utter the words faster and more powerfully and with more emphasis. And that's what I've been able to do. So I much prefer the way Dee did approach the Enochian language than the way the Golden Dawn and Crowley did. Now, as far as why I use the Enochian letters instead of the English letters, was kind of the idea of the barbarous names of evocation. If you're uttering something that you don't quite understand and that looks and sounds very unusual, very arcane, it tends to have a more intense magical effect than if you're using something more familiar. And having worked with the Enochian letters on my tablets, I can say from direct experience that the shapes of the Enochian letters have a profound effect on the psyche as well as the language itself. So I think it helps to use the actual Enochian alphabet rather than converting them into their English letter equivalents. Well, I created my tablets using Microsoft Excel, interestingly enough. As it turns out, Microsoft Excel is the ideal product for making any kind of magical
table. Yeah. But, I mean, going back to Dee, I mean, his is in English, though. He didn't use the Enochian letters.
Well, it's interesting. Dee never much used a lot of his magic. There's no record of Dee actually using the ether system. He didn't use the watchtower system too much. From what Lon teaches, Dee and Kelly received a number of different magical systems, and just as they were about to actually employ these things, they split up. And it was left to later generations and later centuries to actually employ them. So, well,
I just mentioned that because you seem to be more of a Dee and Kelly traditionalist, which I think is fine and great. And if you go to like a True and Faithful Revelation, you see the watchtowers listed there in English, and then but then you use them in the Enochian. So I was just kind of curious on why. And so you're looking to do the more of the using kind of the differentness or the strangeness of that to get the different psychological states to kind of put you in a different kind of, maybe I don't want to use the word sacred or anything, but definitely a different mental space.
Right. Well, I like to use the word arcane. The Enochian font is most definitely arcane, and what I've done in approaching Enochian magic is to take elements of Dee's operation and elements of the Golden Dawn operation and to synthesize my own system that works very well for me. My hope in writing this book, as I've said, is to encourage people to take up the practice of Enochian magic and not so much you do exactly what I've done, but to develop their own style of practice like I've done and to get results that are good for them. I'm not trying to set up new standards or tell people what to do. I'm just trying to inspire people to take up the system and develop their own syntheses like I've done.
Well, let's talk about the invocation ritual that you use in the back, because you do something that very few people do, and you give, very clear, very straightforward, very